Hello, you beautiful human, and welcome back to my channel. It is nighttime. I'm having my glass of wine. I'm in a hoodie, a crew neck that is keeping me warm. I've got my little blankie, and so I'm ready to get into it with y'all. I've got my computer because we know that I'm not going to remember all the things I need to say, or actually I'm going to say too much and not stay on track with what I'm actually trying to tell you because I like to talk. So, got my wine, got my blankie, got my little space heater. I don't know if anybody else is like this, but I love heat on my feet. Like, I could ride around in the summertime with the windows down, but the heat on, but it just blowing on my feet. Anybody else like that? Maybe, maybe not. That's like a thing for me. I've done it a couple of times. If you've been in the car with me, you'll be like, why is the heat on my feet? And it's because my feet are always cold, but I want the windows down, so like it regulates. Anywho, that's beside the point. So we're back with 6 more things related to how to have and build healthy relationships. So let's hop right into it. We're going to pick up where we left off last week talking about boundaries. So last week I told y'all that you need to be confident in communicating what you do and do not want, like or dislike, need or don't need within the context and spaces of your relationships. Now we need to talk about boundaries. So once we have identified what those spaces are that we need to let go, like, dislike, want more of, or want less of, we need to say to ourselves, how often, if at all, am I going to allow a person to not meet me where I'm asking them to meet me? How often am I going to allow them to either not meet my expectation or cross the line in the sand that I said I don't like going there? How many times am I going to get into a screaming match with this individual before I say, I have expressed to you many times I don't like arguing. I would like to walk away when we start arguing. You do not give me that opportunity, and I continue to engage in argumentative behavior with you, and that's crossing a boundary that I have, not only with myself, but also with you and the way I see relationship. So when we start vocalizing those things that we expect in a relationship or that we would like to see happen within our relationship, we then need to kind of start thinking to ourselves, what is the time frame I'm going to give this person to meet that expectation? What are my boundaries surrounding this expectation? Is this a flexible expectation, something that I'm willing to compromise on, fold on a time or two, or is this a hard no? You need to know what those hard no's are, what those flexible moments are, what those forgiving moments are, and set them clearly throughout the context of your relationship. I also think that those boundaries should be consistent across any relationship. And I know sometimes we get into the habit of, family is different. Family is not everybody. Some of us need some family boundaries. Some of us need to say, hey, I was raised that way, Mom, and I really appreciate everything you did for me, but I'm not raising my kids that way. Some of you need to say, hey, I know Unc, Auntie, whoever, that we joked a lot about my appearance as a child, me being too skinny, me being too big, whatever the case may have been. But as an adult, I would really prefer if we just don't talk about my weight. It does not make me feel good. We need to start setting those boundaries and knowing what they are, and those boundaries should be consistent across the board, because we can take those same boundaries we just mentioned and apply them to a friendship. We can apply them to a relationship. Boundaries are necessary. So we need to set boundaries. Set boundaries, be clear about them, reevaluate them often. That's like part A of this. We need to reevaluate those boundaries often and understand that there are seasons and spaces in life where the boundary may be one thing here, but it's not the same thing a year down the line. And that's okay, because we are ever growing, ever changing, ever molding humans and individuals. So number 1 for today's tip is set clear boundaries and set them up front, as well as be willing to come back and revisit or reevaluate those boundaries with certain individuals in your life. Number 2 is know and understand the dynamic within your relationship so that you can approach discomfort and conflict appropriately, right? I think when we have conflict or discomfort in relationships, it is not that one person is right or wrong. It is not that one person's approach or view is right or wrong. It is that we need to be able to know and understand the dynamics so we can approach the person appropriately. So when I say that, I mean understand that the way in which you may approach something with one individual is not going to be the same as you approach it with another individual. I have a 3-year-old nephew and I have a 10-year-old nephew. The way in which I talk to the 3-year-old and approach that dynamic is completely different in the way in which I talk to the 10-year-old. Even though rules are the same across the board, the way in which I communicate my expectations, my needs, and rules are different, right? And so understanding the dynamic of the relationship so that when it comes time to communicate, you can communicate clearly. To take that a step farther, when we talk about dynamic, we need to know, what does this person bring to the table? What am I going to notice about what makes them tick, their pet peeves? That can be a pro and a con, because sometimes when we are not operating as our best selves, we will use what we know as their pet peeve as a way to get under their skin. But if you use it in a healthy manner, which is why we are all here to work on becoming whole, healthy individuals, if you use it in a healthy manner, it can be a way for you to construct conversations that might be difficult in a way that is palatable for the person you're talking to. I know we live in a society that says, well, they know how I meant it. I said it out of love, so they should know how I meant it. They should know I never say anything that I don't mean from my heart. Also, watch your tone when you're talking to me. Learn how to fix that, because you can say something and have the same exact intention, but say it better. Words matter, and the way in which you say things, your delivery can change the entire temperature of the conversation. So when we know and understand the dynamics within our relationships, we can approach things completely different, which will help push the needle forward within the relationship when dealing with confrontation, which is what we all hope. But you have to learn the dynamic first before you even learn how to operate within it during conflict. So that's number 2. Know and understand the dynamics within your relationship. Number 3 is be willing to let a person grow. And you can decide whether you are going to grow with them or whether this is the place where you kind of drop off the roster, but never be the person that stunts their growth. I think for me, one of the biggest things that Jared and I have talked about within the context of our relationship is that there were times where he was growing and elevating and being in positions that he felt really called to be in. And because of insecurity or whatever the case may have been, I was not willing to tag along for the ride. But I didn't want to go nowhere. Clearly, I didn't want to go nowhere. I married the man. But I didn't like what came with that elevation. So I struggled, right? And one thing we don't ever want to do is stunt someone's growth. I don't ever want someone to look back and say, I didn't do XYZ because she was a factor in that. She held me back. She took years off my life. She didn't support me, or I had to argue with her night and day to just even make an inch worth of progress. We don't want to be those people. And if you're in a place where you are not ready or not capable of providing that support and celebration for a person who has experienced a moment of growth, evaluate what you need to do. Do I need to take a step back? Do I need to push myself to be able to grow and elevate with them? What do I need to do in order to support this person in their growth right now? It's as plain as that. So be willing to grow or go, but don't stunt nobody. Don't stunt them folks that are connected to you. Don't be the reason they can't go on to the next phase of their life because you are sour. Don't do it. Okay? Number 4 is be willing to recognize how you contribute to the dysfunction or the unity within the scope of your relationships. So when we are talking about this, when we talk about dysfunctional behavior, we are talking about the things that do not serve any purpose, not in our individual lives or in the lives of others as a collective. So when you think of dysfunctional behavior, I instantly think about anger, because the person you all see before you today is not the same person I have always been. And so at times, the dysfunction I contributed to our relationship was my anger, was my reaction to my hurt feelings, was my reaction to frustration, was my reaction to not feeling seen or heard by my spouse. And that was dysfunctional. I was not contributing to our unity. I will say, however, there were times where I was contributing to our unity by vocalizing my needs, by setting aside time to try to communicate, to being expressive in my appreciation and affirmation for my spouse. And I said I want us to think about this outside of the context of just romantic relationships. I think about it with friends. An example for friends might be, you feel like the relationship is dysfunctional or one-sided or not supportive. What role do you play in that? When you think of that person, when you think of that friend, do you pick up the phone and text them? Do you pick up the phone and call them? Do you set aside times and reminders on your calendar to say, let me just see how they're doing? Or do you say, well, they didn't call me, so I'm not calling them. They didn't reach out to me, so I don't got nothing to say to them. That's contributing to the dysfunction. All those things may be true, and the way you could have handled that is say, let me reach out to them so I can express that I feel like my boundary is being crossed and my needs are not being met, and maybe we can determine where we go from here. But sitting there and stewing and expecting someone to do something that you're not doing does not help. It doesn't push the needle forward. That is like my favorite term right now. We're working to push the needle forward. It doesn't do that. It just contributes to the dysfunction. And I hope that just as much as I am, I hope y'all are sick of dysfunctional relationships. I don't want them around. I don't need them around. They do not serve us any purpose. Sometimes we get a high out of dysfunctional relationships. Some of us like to thrive in chaos because it makes us feel purposeful. It makes us feel like we have something to fix, something to latch onto, something to talk about, some kind of drama to be involved in. And that is why we remain in dysfunctional relationships. But that is a video for another day. But we have to recognize, what do I contribute to this relationship? What do I take away? Something I've been very clear in doing within our marriage is if Jared says something like, oh yeah, next time we should work on communication, I've been very intentional to say, okay, can you explain to me how you feel as though I miscommunicated? Sometimes he will go, well, now that I think about it, you didn't miscommunicate. So then I will go, so in this situation, you have to work on communication. Instead of just going, yeah, we need to work on communication. When really what I feel is not that it's a we kind of situation. It's a you kind of situation. And I give him the liberty to say that to me too. When we start having these raw, real conversations, it is important to recognize that when you open that door and expect somebody to allow you to be raw and real with them, you better be ready to receive what's on the other end. Because if you're not, what you are creating is a dynamic that says, I am more important than you. My needs are more important than yours. You're also opening the door for that person to say, I can't do this anymore. This is exhausting. This is taxing. This is one-sided, and I don't want it. And if it's a relationship that you're trying to repair or create, it can't be that way. So, number 4 is recognize how you contribute to the success, the unity, or the dysfunction and despair within your relationship. Number 5 is a quote straight from Brene Brown. Love Brene Brown. If you don't know who she is, go look her up. Read everything she writes. Listen to everything she says. She is right. We love Brene. But she says, clear is kind. Unclear is unkind. Boop. Drop the mic. That's all that needs to be said. Clear is kind. Unclear is unkind. If you are in a relationship where you are hoping to have success, which 9 times out of 10, none of us get into relationships with the hopes of failure. Clarity has to be something you prioritize. Say what you mean what you say. Say how you feel how you say it. Do not say one thing out of your mouth but feel another way in your heart. Do not say one thing with your mouth but expect something else in return. That is why I think some of the first key stepping stones, as I talked about last week, to successful relationships, start with the internal work. The internal work has to be done in order for you to even communicate clearly and kindly. If there is no internal work happening, and if there is no level of self-awareness, I can't expect you to even know what to tell me, because your self-awareness meter is in the negative. But if I do have a level of self-awareness, if I am investing in loving myself and understanding my uglies and understanding my insecurities and sharing those things with you and knowing how those things impact me but also impact the dynamic, I can be clear about what I need, what I feel, and how I need people to show up and how I expect myself to show up. In the words of Brene Brown, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. That is number 5. Number 6, place people in their designated roles according to their behavior. In our relationships, we force people into the box that we want them to fit in instead of listening to the signs and cues that they are giving us in terms of where they would like to be. And I think it is time that me, you, us as a collective stop forcing people to fit into roles that they were never meant to play a part in. I saw something on Instagram that said, you are the CEO of your life. You have the ability to hire, fire, and promote as you please. Hello, you are the CEO of your life. You have the power and the ability to hire, fire, promote, demote as you please. That is the most empowering quote, one of the most, because there are many empowering quotes, but that is an extremely empowering quote when it comes to the context of relationships. If you feel like somebody's not living up to the position you gave them in your life, demote them, fire them, rehire, put up a help wanted sign, do something. But you are the CEO of your world, of your relationships, of your circle. And understanding that because you are the CEO, right? You need to be able to do that with tact, dignity, and respect for the person you're talking to. Sometimes we hear those quotes and we instantly get into this superiority complex, this I can say and do as I feel to people because I can. And you can't because you're a grown adult. And in this level of life that we are living and in the life that we are trying to live, we want to be the CEOs that operate in dignity, respect, and in humility. And so in order to do that, even when we are hiring, firing, demoting, promoting individuals in our lives, we are going to do it with respect, dignity, and humility because of the person they are. And recognizing that we might not be on the same page anymore, but that is no need for me to disrespect you. That is no need for me to say things ugly about you. That is no need for me to get on social media and talk about you. Because the CEO that I am over my life holds herself or himself to a higher standard. We as a society have to stop doing this thing that because we are no longer on the same level, on the same page, in the same friend group, now I have to say something negative about you. I have to explain to people why we aren't friends anymore. Simmer down with that, grow up and mature, and realize that you are allowed to separate and remove yourself from certain environments without it being toxic, without it being the next drama, without it being a Real Housewives of Atlanta debacle. You can just remove yourself. You can have a clear, kind, progressive conversation with that individual while saying, hey, I just think we are reaching our inroad. I appreciate you for bringing XYZ to my life, and now we move on. Or you don't have to do that at all. There is such thing called quiet separation. I don't have to say anything because we've already been silent. We ain't talked in 6 months, so what do I need to call and tell you that we're not talking for anymore? Why would I do that? Think about that and tell me if it makes sense. If you're the kind of person that needs to call to reiterate something, write it down in the journal. Because what was the point of you getting on the telephone or texting somebody to tell them that you no longer fool with them when y'all ain't been fooling with each other for 5 months? Make it make sense. I'm just saying. It's okay to make a silent exit. Some of us need to remember that. It's okay to make a silent exit because some of us are giving very much so Nicki Minaj. And it's not cute. It's not cute. And I'll be the first to admit that I, in previous stages of my life, have been a Nikki. I don't know how to make a quiet exit. I feel like I need to be seen. I need to say what I've got to say, and everybody needs to hear me say what I have to say so that I can set the record straight so that people know what actually happened. I know what happened. You know what happened. God knows what happened. That's all I care about. And I can make a silent what? Exit. Some of us need to work on that. Some of us need to work on not opening our mouths prematurely, post-conversation. Learn when to be quiet. Learn when to say nothing at all. Nothing at all. So I'm going to leave y'all with those 6 tips today. Number 1 is be upfront about your boundaries and reevaluate them constantly, consistently, as often as you can. Know and understand the dynamic within your relationship so you can have tough conversations with people you care about. Be willing to grow with the person or go, but do not stunt them from doing what they feel called to do next. Number 4 is recognize how you contribute to dysfunction and chaos within your relationship, but also be willing to recognize how you contribute to unity in the beautiful moments. Clear is kind, unclear is unkind. Number 6, place people in the roles that they show up in. Don't try to make these folks fit in the box that they didn't sign up for. And that's it, y'all. That's it. That's all I got to say tonight. I want to keep sipping on my little wine. And then I'm going to drink my sleepy time tea. I'm going to go read a book or something. Your reminders for tonight are this. Close your eyes. They're not texting you back. They're not even thinking about you. Close your eyes. Rest. Okay? Your second reminder is the people on social media are not thinking about you either. Put your phone down. It's time to go to sleep. Okay? They're not thinking about you. As much as they may like you, as much as they may root for you when they see you across their timeline, as much as you may comment and support their content, they are not thinking about you. So close your eyes and get some sleep. Number 3 is when you wake up in the morning, whether you wake up on the right side or the wrong side, don't cause no chaos in somebody else's day. Auntie Tabitha tells us that all the time. Whether you wake up whatever side you choose to wake up on, that is your prerogative. But don't go carrying that chaos over to somebody else. They didn't ask for it. As always, follow me on all social media platforms at with Angie K. Like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate you. I love you. Have a good night. I'm going to go put a pimple patch on this crater that is growing on my head. Bye, y'all.